This is KGW News at noon.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Willis. Thanks for being with us. We're tracking three top stories this afternoon, starting with new developments in the death of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Turkish leaders say Saudi officials plotted his murder for days. Turkey's president released the details of its investigation overnight. He alleges Saudi officials began planning Khashoggi's murder in late September. He also says Saudis used a body double to make it appear as if Khashoggi actually left the consulate. Turkey's investigation contradicts Saudi Arabia's explanation that the journalist was accidentally killed during a fistfight inside the consulate. Right now, CIA Chief Gina Haspel is in Turkey to review evidence in the case. The first woman on the Supreme Court is revealing that she has dementia. Sandra Day O'Connor shared the news this morning in a letter released by the court. O'Connor says she has the beginning stages of dementia and probably Alzheimer's disease. She was diagnosed some time ago, she says. She's stepping away from public life and will continue to live in Phoenix, surrounded by family and friends. President Ronald Reagan nominated O'Connor in 1981, and she served until her retirement back in 2006. Stocks are taking a dive on Wall Street today. This is a live look at the big board. Dow Jones Index now down about 40 points. It was down 400 earlier this morning. Technology companies, banks, and industrial stocks are leading the slide. CNBC reports the trade war between the U.S. and China has a lot of investors worried at the moment. See the fluctuation from 50 to actually 60. Back here in Portland, accused killer Jeremy Christian is in court for now the second day in a row. His defense team is setting the stage to keep him from a death sentence if he's found guilty. More now live from KGW's Tim Gordon. Been listening in, and Tim, they've got an expert witness testifying.
Yeah, right, Chris. You know, this is a pretrial hearing, but the defense does have an expert on the stand in there to say that those convicted of aggravated murder are no more dangerous in prison than other convicts. Here's the 36-year-old coming into the courtroom just before 10 a.m. Jeremy Christian is not on trial yet, but he could eventually be found guilty of killing two men and injuring another in a knife attack on a MAX train last year. Then he could face the death penalty or life in prison. The defense team picked up on its effort to keep Christian alive. Their expert made the case that aggravated murder convicts are no more likely to be violent in prison than others. The expert used data that showed those with a life sentence have incentive to not act out because they're in prison for the long haul. And he says the once evil, always evil theory that many believe isn't accurate.
So they are routinely argued, routinely asserted, but in fact are not supported by science.
The defense is trying to get the judge to rule out the death penalty in the case. There are motions to do that on constitutional principles, but they haven't quite gotten there yet. Yeah, it is a process for sure here at the courthouse. Another day expected to go on tomorrow. That expert spent a few hours testifying yesterday, a few more so far today. Prosecutors haven't even had a chance to cross-examine him yet today, and all along, we should say Jeremy Christian, unlike in the past, is remaining quiet in the courthouse. Back to you.
Tim Gordon live for us. Thank you, Tim. We will, of course, continue to follow this hearing and bring you updates both on the air and online at KGW.com and on the free KGW app. All right, let's get to your forecast now. A live look from our Newport Skycam. We're seeing a big change from that dry stretch of weather, although that shot is just picturesque, isn't it? Blue skies. Rod Hill's following your forecast. All right, Rod, when's it coming?
Yeah, that wasn't the shot. I saw the camera 5 minutes ago, Chris. It was a solid overcast, so things changed. Interesting, though, if you look at our radar and we're tracking this incoming rain, it could be raining, for example, when folks hit the roads around 5 o'clock this afternoon in Portland to drive home. Anyway, you see a little bit of inland rain that's just cleared Yaquina Bay, and now they're getting a break. But generally speaking, this is fairly solid cloud cover moving in. Showers around Tillamook and a bigger batch offshore from Astoria. Here's a Pacific City, our live camera there, 58 degrees. Portland remaining dry through at least 3 o'clock today, and maybe will be dry until after 4 as well. We're only at 51, and it does not appear we're going to get much, if any, sun this afternoon, which will likely keep temperatures in the 50s for a high. Yesterday it was pushing 70. Here's Futurecast. 2 o'clock this afternoon. Some rain around Newport. Still not a lot inland. And we'll play this at 4:30. Now we've got some showers that have perhaps moved across Salem and down toward Albany. A little bit of rain showing up in the west part of the Portland metro area, and now we've got just kind of broken showers at 5:30. None of this would amount to much, so again for your afternoon, showers coming in late afternoon, dinner time, maybe a trace to 5/100 of an inch. Temperatures will be in the 50s. We'll have the 7-day forecast, which features a better chance of more significant rain coming up shortly, Chris.
I thought it would. All right, Rod, thank you for that. Hey, here's something to think about. Researchers say they've discovered new fault lines on Mount Hood that could trigger an up to 7.2 magnitude earthquake. Take a look. New mapping techniques have allowed researchers to find what's underneath the forest. They've discovered active faults on the south side of the mountain. If any of these faults were to rupture, they would pose a significant threat to cities near Mount Hood and do damage in Portland.
We really talk about Cascadia and the big one as our main seismic source here in the Northwest, but we actually live on a series of these crustal faults that can also provide a significant ground shaking for this region.
That crustal quake would be shorter than a subduction zone quake, but still strong enough to knock you off your feet. What's not clear yet is when the earthquake could happen. It's likely earthquakes on these lines come about every 3,000 years, but researchers don't know when they last ruptured. All right, now to developing news in Northeast Portland. Police investigating a deadly shooting in the Park Rose neighborhood. It happened about 1:30 a.m. Officers found a man lying on the sidewalk near the Glass House Tavern with a gunshot wound. He later died, and police say another man was also shot. He should be okay, though. We don't know yet what led up to that shooting. Some new technology at the airport helped stop a traveler with fake ID. That happened Saturday at PDX. TSA officers used new verification technology called Credential Authentication Technology, or CAT, to confirm the man's ID was a fake. Officers notified the Port of Portland police, but the man took off, ran away, has not been found. The TSA found several fake IDs and credit cards and equipment used to make fraudulent documents in the man's luggage. Now to a story only on KGW. Parents in Gaston say their kids were unfairly kicked off the football team after going to a party where other kids were smoking pot. The district confirms several students were suspended for the rest of the season for breaking the athletes' code of conduct at a recent party. Some of them were caught smoking marijuana around a bonfire, but the parents of two of those suspended athletes say their sons didn't take the drugs. They say the boys, ages 13 and 14, were stuck at the sleepover since it was after midnight and they can't drive.
But my son left the activity, which was the pot smoking, and immediately left inside the house to go to bed. That's how I'm interpreting it. That's how half the town is interpreting it.
Ensuring that they represent themselves and our district to the highest standard is our job.
District officials say they can't speak specifically about this case, but say it was thoroughly investigated by multiple school officials. The parents say they're going to appeal that suspension. We are now exactly 2 weeks away from the midterm elections. Both sides are bringing out the heavy hitters to drive out voters. It looked like a flashback to 2016. President Trump was in Texas last night campaigning for his former bitter rival, Senator Ted Cruz. President Obama was in Nevada campaigning for Senate candidate Jackie Rosen. Both talked about a Republican proposal to cut taxes again despite a growing federal budget deficit.
We're going to be putting in a 10% tax cut for middle-income families. It's going to be put in next week.
If you believe that folks like me need a tax cut and folks like your grandma needs a cut in her Social Security, then you're right. You should just sit home and not vote.
Early voting is already underway in several states. New at noon, we're getting an update on seismic improvements to the Washington Park Reservoir. Engineers took the media on a tour of the site this morning. They're making progress on a new 12.4 million gallon underwater drinking reservoir. The aim is to make the reservoir strong enough to withstand a major earthquake. Crews spent the last 2 years digging out a 90-foot hole for the reservoir. The next step is to fill it in with concrete.
Now we have 30,000 yards of concrete to pour, essentially beginning in about 4 weeks, and we'll do that. That'll be the entire structure of the Reservoir 3 that's going to contain the water that the overall end result for this project is.
Engineers expect concrete work to take about 2 years. Once the underground reservoir is complete, the city will build a new park attraction with reflecting pools that will be open to the public. The entire project is expected to wrap up in 2023.